What up gamers, I'm Jason and today on Dice and Dragons I'm going to be reviewing the part of the first set of CMON comic books. This is Zombicide Invader, which was also published in conjunction with Guillotine Games. This first book is known as Dread Contact. It has art by Giancarlo Oliveri with a story by Luna Enoch and Stefano Vietti. Now in the first part of this video I'm going to discuss this comic book with as many, with no spoilers. Well, that is my goal. You might get a few minor ones, and then we'll go through the entire story and the book with full spoilers. So don't worry, I will be letting you know when we make that switch. Now, this also came with some extras for the game Zombicide Invader, and if you would like to check those out, there'll be a card popping up in the corner that will take you back to my unboxing of all of the CMON comic book content and the extras that came for the games. Now, let's talk about Zombicide Invader Dread Contact. There are definitely a lot of different sci-fi TV shows, movies, books that have been incorporated into this universe. And I have to say, overall, this this has the most interesting story potential of all the CMON comic books that I've read so far. If you've heard my thoughts on Rising Sun, you know that I felt that it didn't really work. And because of all these different influences that were combined into the world of Zombicide Invader, you get an interesting story that adapts small elements from all these different stories that can be ongoing. And the way the book ends, there is definitely an ongoing element which harkens back to some other sci-fi franchises, which I'll get to later on in the video. Now, just to explain the setup, we are on planet PKL7. It is the only known source of Xenium in the galaxy, and it is currently under attack by the Xenos. Now, Xenos are 3 different races that have a pathogen in their blood, and for whatever reason, they go crazy and are now attacking humans. Now, there's been some small, minor retcons to how everything was set up in the board game. So in the original board game, the Xenos were on the planet when humans arrived, and then eventually they went mad. It is believed because of the Xenium, and this planet is the only source of Xenium in the universe. In the comic book, the Xenos just magically appeared and started attacking humans. So a small minor change, but I feel that it fits well for the story. We do see some stuff that maybe implies that the Xenos were specifically sent to the planet for a reason. Now the story opens up on a ship that then crash lands on the planet. There is some crazy stuff happens. It is a Zombicide Invader based story. So you can imagine, if you know what happens with the Xenos, ship crashes, things go haywire, and then we are introduced to our main characters. Now you will get some backstory on the main characters for this story. It is the new characters that are featured more heavily than the others in this story, which I do really like, with Captain Kane and drawing a blank on his not his sidekicks, but his right-hand woman, who is a very capable soldier and assassin. It's very cool. You may also see some of your favorite characters that also are introduced, as well as you do see some characters that make it in from the stretch goals. The back of the book does have some few short stories, even one for the new Empusa character that was included in the comic book extras. And I really like that we get to see some of the really cool characters from Zombicide Invader, just surviving and trying to, get out of this really tough situation. Now, one thing that it's important to note, not all characters will be making out of this alive. So your favorite may not survive. But I do overall feel that all the characters were used very well as the elements that were adapted from other stories. There is a lot of pitch black that is adapted to the opening sequence. There is also the civilian, or the Count, that's in charge of running the Xenium operation, who looks a little bit like Baron Harkonnen, and definitely you feel that Zune callback in terms of the fact that this is the only place in the known galaxy to get Xenium, and the Count is running his operation no matter what the cost. I really enjoy that those elements are all at play here, and it really does give you this nice, interesting story with a couple of through lines as well. The orphans do make an appearance in this comic book as well with their own backstory, so if you did happen to buy them as an add-on to Zombicide Invader, you're going to learn more about the characters. They use very well, and I really enjoyed it. Now, this definitely is a sci-fi horror story, so it may not be the best comic book for all ages, but much like Invader, if it doesn't bother your kids, then they'll be fine to read this story, although there is definitely some gore, so I'd recommend keeping this for teens and not younger players or comic book readers. Now, the story has a lot of interesting elements. This really feels like it's a part one of the story where you end on a fantastic note for another book. And compared to Zombicide Day 1, Rising Sun, and at this point I've also read the Cthulhu Death May Die comic book, this is the one I want to continue because I find the through line fascinating. The way that this adapts elements of Pitch Black, Dune, and Aliens, I was drawing a blank there for a second, to make its own distinct story, I think are really cool and fascinating. And I do like the story being told. I like how we've got a military governor who's trying to take care of her people on the planet, making tough decisions. We've got the Count, which is at odds with her, who is Xenium at all costs. And then these other people that, crash land on this planet and just thrown into this terrible situation, who also is similar to the orphans who are on the planet and trying to fix their ship. I think it's just really cool the way everything comes together, and it is by far my favorite of the comic books. I think it's got an interesting story, and I really am looking forward to volume 2 of this story, hopefully in the near future. I think I've talked enough about the comic book without getting into any real spoilers. You get a couple hints of ideas as to what's going on in the story. So let's break it down and get into a full spoiler conversation about Zombicide Invader Dread Contact. Here's your last warning. If you enjoyed the content and you want to see what my final score is, take a look down below in the video description. You can skip ahead to where I'm going to give my final summary. With that being said, now we're into it. It's full spoilers. So the book opens up with Captain Kane and his compatriots staging a prison break. There was an incident that happened in his past, is not quite clear, where he ended up in the stockade and military prison. They break out, and unfortunately during the escape, and where they take over the ship, its engines are damaged, which forced him to crash land on the planet. Now, they try to communicate with the governor, who warns them off, and they crash land there anyway. So as they're making their way to the facility after crash landing on the runway, they are attacked by Xenos. The Xenos decimate the survivors of the crash, and the governor, she does send out her forces to help them make it back, but unfortunately it's too late, and you do see the new stepmother Abomination, who is implied to be controlling the Xenos. Now, once the characters are introduced to the governor, she learns who they are, but doesn't really tell them, but finds out, they're survivors, they've got skills, and their ship has fortunately provided them with what they needed to repair their communications array and get some help. Now, in the ensuing attempt to get the communications array, it's found out that Captain Kane and the other survivors are actually prisoners. It's the cyborg Emma Vogel who finds out, and she is summarily killed. Now, some of the other troops that are with them get killed as they try to get the equipment back into the compound to safety so they can communicate for help. But Captain Kane is luckily saved by the band of orphans. Now, the orphans eventually do help them get back to the compound, and they learn more about the orphans a little bit and the Xenos and the situation on the planet. The orphans are trying to repair their ship and are stranded there just like Captain Kane. Now, the governor does find out about Kane and decides to use this to send him on a suicide mission, because in order to reactivate the array, they need the assistance of the Count and the resources that he has. Currently, he is locked up, and his mining operation is well protected from the Xenos, so he's got his workers still working and has no interest in working with the military governor for the good of all of the survivors. His also focus is on getting Xenium and waiting for someone to eventually come for their scheduled pickup. Now, Captain Kane and the orphans do finally make it over to the Count's area. Some stuff goes on. The Count refuses to help them. They let the Xenos into the mining operation, forcing him to stop the operation, and which allows him to divert power to the new communications array and send out that distress signal. Because of the ensuing events, the Count does try to kill Captain Kane and his compatriots, but the orphans save their lives and get them back to the compound. Now, during all of this events, we do have someone, I believe it's Magnus, that is injured. He's taken to the doctor who we do see throughout the comic book. She's not a major part of this specific story, but she is studying the Xenos and trying to find a way to stop them and figure out how these three species are linked together through this pathogen and maybe where they came from and why they were sent to the planet. Magnus is resisting the infection. We do have the communication that gets successfully sent. And at the end of the story, we see the arrival of the characters from Black Ops in their spaceships who are going to come down and save the day. It does seem to imply that there's some more information going on, and the Black Ops characters really do remind me of people from 2040, almost that Space Marine type battalion. So I'm eager to see these characters enter the fray and see how things are going to change. Now, I would like to get some more backstory for all the characters, but I do think overall the book does a good job of explaining the situation. You do get to see some really cool characters and learn more about what's going on in the background. I really like the story for Impusa, and I think that this is a great comic. And it's definitely for someone that's a fan of Zombicide Invader, even if you're not, getting this really cool sci-fi horror story. So now I'm going to give you my score for the comic book. I give this an 8.5. It's an enjoyable story. It's the best of the comic books. If you're a fan of the game or just a comic book fan, sci-fi horror fan, you're going to enjoy the story that's being told. There's a great adaptation of different elements to create this new and interesting world that takes elements from lots of other different sci-fi franchises. So there you have it. That's my score. Definitely pick this up, whether you like comic books or you're a fan of Zombicide Invader. Now, I'd just like to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when our next video is released. Also, down below in the video description, you'll find links to all of our social media feeds, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you'd like to see pictures of Julie and I playing Zombicide Invader, they'll be there on those feeds. Now, if you're looking to pick up the copy of the game, in the video description, you'll also find a link to multizone.ca, a great Canadian game store. Click that link. It'll take you to the website. You'll get 10% off your next purchase, and it's a great way to support the channel as a portion of that purchase will be returned to us. Then popping up in front of me are going to be links to our previously released content. Over here, it's going to take you back to our most recent release, and over here, you're going to see our playlist, which has everything from our coverage on CMON's comic books, as well as the comic book extras. And with that being said, don't forget, keep reading comic books, and most importantly, keep playing games.